All right. All right, guys, let's look at this. I want to look at this one with you guys, answer any other questions you guys have, and then I have another example to have you guys work on. Yeah. And then we'll talk about proportions, and then we'll head out. So the very first thing is, what's the claim? And whatever the claim is, that statement has got to go in either HO or H1. And now you know exactly how to determine which one it's going to go in for. Depends on if it's got an equal sign or not. So what is the claim here? Yeah, mu is greater than 7.25. And this is loosely based on real data. Loosely. Sort of like Blair Witch. Loosely based on a real story. So which one is that going to be, HO or H1? H1. Totally. It doesn't have an equal sign in it, so it's got to be H1. So what's HO got to be? Opposite. All right, cool. So I wanted the one I gave you to try on your own to be sort of similar to the one we did earlier. They're not always going to be this way. That's the disadvantage of doing that, is students start to latch on to the wrong thing. The claim will not always be H1. Why was the claim H1 in the last two problems we did? Because the claim didn't have an equal sign. That's all. That's it. That's the only reason that they were both H1. I like it. Is it a 1 or a 2-tail test? 1. Yeah, because I just want to show it's greater. I just got to look that way. I don't care about the other direction. Oops. Yeah. Z-scores, T-scores, or nothing? Yeah, what two things you got to show? Yeah, so it's got to be normal. Either I tell you it's normal, or n has got to be big enough. So here n is 36, which is bigger than 30. Check, normal enough. And then which one really determines, yeah, which standard deviation do we know? Sample, S known, sigma unknown. So we want to use T-score. I like it. Or we have to use T-score. I don't care what you want. You got to. All right, and now I tell you on part C what the alpha is. And alpha is just always the area and the tail of the z-score that tells you what far enough away is. The benchmark z-score, the critical z-score. So alpha is 0.01. It's a one-tail test. What's the degrees of freedom? 35. Good, 35. So those three things together, I can look on the t-score chart and get my t-score. So what'd you guys get for that?
2.438.
All right, let me stop there for a second. So even if you didn't quite make it through this whole worksheet, you want to make sure that you can duplicate what we just did. All right, look at the t-score chart. One tail, 0.01, that tells you which column to look in. Stop at 35, and you should get 2.438. That would show enough evidence for this test. If we can get past that for our sample, then it looks like this guy's right, this guy's wrong. We're showing evidence for that. So now part D. Now, how do I say this in words? If T star is bigger than that, reject the hope, support the high. All right. Very interesting stance. Taken. All right, so step C is tell me what's enough evidence. Tell me what's far enough away. And step D is, well, let's go see how far away we got. So what do we find in our sample? What's our sample information? X bar was
8.45.
Who to what?
8.45.
8.45. S was
2.38.
2.38. So what's the new?
8.3, sorry,
8.3?
Yeah.
All right. 8.3. Okay. So the new standard deviation. What, is everybody cool with the fact that we have to change this, even though it's an S? Again, I try to make this distinction a lot when we first talked about this, but this is true for. This is the standard deviation for
Sample.
individuals.
Oh,
That's the key. if you look at it incorrectly, you'll think that you don't have to do this because your brain tells you, I don't have to make it into a standard. No, you never do that. You're making it from a standard deviation that works for individuals into a standard deviation that works for groups. So you always have to do it. I don't care if you have sigma or S. Sigma and S are first individuals. I need the one that works for groups of size 36. So I have to change that. Do you guys get that? So don't say it's a sample. I know it is, but really, when you look at it like this, it's for individuals. I need it for groups of 36. All right, I like it. Some of you guys are looking at me like you always do, so everything's good. So what do you get when you do this? 0.472. And then we make our T, which is really our same as a Z. It's the same formula. So it's going to be our mean minus the accepted middle over the correct standard deviation. And you get something interesting. You should. 2.54. Sweet. Now I said to get a p-value, and that was a little evil because this problem was originally a z-score problem, and then I changed it to a t-score problem. I'm not going to talk right now about how to find p-values for t-scores. We'll talk about that later. So don't worry about the p-value yet. But right now, what can I say very quickly? This is not good enough for a conclusion, but what little phrase can I say? Did we make it far enough? Yes. So, no. So that was up here. So we did it. T star was greater than this. So then we can reject the low. Support the high. Okay, cool. I like it. Just because we got far enough away. So now the final step is to write the conclusion. Did we find evidence? Yes. When would we not have found evidence? When would I say we have not found evidence? If it was back here, if it wasn't in the region. So if it's in there, we have found evidence. If it's not in there, we haven't found evidence. We can't say anybody's right or wrong. So here we found it. We have found evidence. We have found, in fact, let me be more specific. We found sufficient evidence. To do what? What's my claim? Yeah, my claim is H1. If my claim had been HO, I would say to reject the blah, blah, blah. But my claim is H1, so I'm going to use this language. Do not let that last step be extra weird. It's not. It's just a little bit weird. You just said, which one's my claim? Let me use that language. Scheisse. We have found sufficient evidence to... Oh, thank God. You never know how long it's going to go. To support the claim that what?
The mean lifespan.
In captivity, greater than the wild. I like it. Cool. All right. So please have some stamina. None of this is graded, so you don't have to freak out that it's going to be something I'm going to look at and grade. Right? Just do what you can for it. We're going to do one more of these. And then I'll talk a little bit about what the next section will look like. Oh yeah, I'm kind of happy with it. Oh yeah, cool. All right. Make sure this is the one I want to do now. Oh, if they're not exactly? Yeah. Then you would go back and round it. You know, yeah. It's almost impossible for the dash to prove it.
Did he give you guys a
When I teach it, I use the angel. One time I tried it, I was wrong. Like the angel book with the teaching how to work with numbers. Yeah.
We didn't get it.
Oh, yes, we did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They say they was declared. Evil. What's the opposite of that? What's the opposite of evil? Not evil. Does it say less than? And then it's really obvious where it's got to go if it's got an equal sign.